3 seconds?
Yeah.
Yeah, stand by.
Is that better?
I'm wearing a medal, the Afghanistan Service Medal. Really, my own personal thoughts on it is just a hunk of tin.
You wait for the fridge. If we can turn the fridge off.
Glasses are a bit foggy there.
Excellent.
Rolling.
Super.
Mr. Ambassador, you have assembled before you, here on Parliament Hill and right across Canada, a people united in outrage, in grief, in compassion, and in resolve. We reel before the blunt and terrible reality of the evil we have just witnessed. Les larmes viennent sans que nous puissions les arrêter. Nous ne pouvons pas ramener les épouses, les pères, les fils et les sœurs disparus.
September 11th, 2001. After the attack on the World Trade Center in New York, the United States declares war on the Taliban in the Middle East. Because of established alliances, Canada is preparing for conflict. Canadian soldiers take the lead on designing combat programs to adapt to Afghanistan's terrain while serving the wave of civilians signing up to fight. These are their stories.
So let's start at why you went to Afghanistan.
I'd say I went to Afghanistan because of September 11th. Yeah, I just found seeing people like jumping out of the building and stuff just made me want to do something about it. I went through a divorce and was walking by a recruit center, and my feet actually turned before my brain even let me comprehend what was happening. And I went in and I said I want to enlist in the infantry. The role of the infantry is to close with and destroy the enemy. That's actually on the brochure when you first walk into a recruit center. I kind of thought that'd be the most effective way to go and get people who, you know, would do such a terrible act as, like, you know, killing all those 3,000 people in the trade towers.
The opportunity came up for an Atlantic deployment. As a reservist, I had a bunch of friends immediately went, "Oh, we'll do that." And I'm like, "Oh, you know, I've got a job. I've got, you know, I was a paramedic then, and I was like, oh, well, you know, guys, you're not going without me." I think 30 of us from the West Nova Scotia Regiment volunteered. We were actually training for the first 3 months or 4 months in Aldershot, which was very unique because that hasn't happened since World War II.
In school, I was a bit of an outcast. I was a nerd. When we were in cadets and stuff, everybody was treated equal, and so it felt right. It felt like it didn't matter what happened in my past or how popular I was. I was here and I had a place. I wanted to be the ground pounder. I wanted to be the guys with the guns like that you see in the movies. I wanted to get out and see the world and do things, and Afghanistan was one of those ways of doing it too. So
I went to Afghanistan because I thought it was my job to do so. It was very clear that I'm an infantry soldier. My job is to do infantry things, and as important as instructing is, and it's probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. I really love teaching. I really loved developing soldiers, turning a civilian into a soldier. It was absolutely amazing. So what they started to do was if anybody who had instructing experience, they were sending all over the country to get people trained as much as they could, as quickly as they could.
I was just finishing high school. I was 18 years old, naive, young. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I wanted to be a military police officer. I wanted to be an RCMP officer. I'm a tough girl with a black belt in judo. I wanted to be tough and have a weapon and, you know, just be authority. My dad was actually a master warrant officer, so we always had conversations about like how amazing the military was and how it fits me and everything. Long story short, my dad died of a heart attack at my graduation party. And after that, I honestly had, I don't know what happened, but I honestly had the need to help somebody.
At first, I was like pretty much the only PPCLI teaching RCRs, putting them through the battle school. Right off the bus kind of thing, bringing them in as recruits, showing them what it's like to be a soldier, putting a uniform on and all that stuff. But we also did infantry battle school to close with and destroy the enemy, to know how to patrol, to know how to use all kinds of weapons, sleep deprivation, how to live in inclement weather, how to take care of your buddy, right? How to see things that others wouldn't see. It was our job to ensure that those we trained not only could do the job, but it was our responsibility to make sure they could do it well enough to save the brothers to our left and right who we serve with. So that was incredibly important to me.
Our GPMG gunner is going to run to the right-hand trench and then start providing fast support. Everyone understand that, yes?
Good job. Hey, thanks, buddy. Yeah, you killed it out there.
Our instructors were the ones who were first on the ground. They were the ones who served in Bosnia and Sarajevo. Our instructors were the ones who knew the guys or were the guys that were in like the Medak pocket. And we wanted to live up to their training. We wanted to be a part of the history of Canada in that sense.
I had previously deployed to Yugoslavia, so I had an idea what the training we were getting into. At the time, we didn't know a lot about Afghanistan. We just knew what we saw in the news.
Well, Kandahar is, of course, the notorious now seat of the Taliban ruling militia. It's also one of the religious...
We knew what part of Afghanistan we were going to. We did as much research as we could. We were all in junior or senior leadership roles within the reserve company that was being put together, so we had to do a lot of studying and reading, a lot of Wikipedia hunting, try to find out the history of where we were going so we could teach the young guys that were going with us.
With Doug's training and Aaron's research of the area, the two passed their knowledge on to their separate divisions of soldiers eager to fight overseas. Due to the nature of the terrain, their pre-deployment training would be their hardest venture yet.
It's very detailed. They teach you how to do everything, all the weapons, machine guns, everything. In battle school, that's where you get your trade-specific training, so you become an infanteer. On that one, I actually did well. I topped the course, so that felt pretty good at being 30 and being a top candidate. So I ended up getting posted to Gagetown, and about 2 weeks into that, they asked me if I wanted to try out for reconnaissance, and they taught us how to do navigation in the wilderness with map and compass, and you'd travel long distances through the forest trying to just figure out this stuff to go from one point to another. And then from there, we trained for a year in Gagetown. And we went to Wainwright, and we did more training out there. And then finally, you know, the time came to go to Afghanistan.
Before I even joined the military, I was a paramedic. I was a civvy paramedic, worked in Edmonton, New Brunswick, helped a lot of people, sick people, people that were hurt, and I just felt like I could contribute with the military. I didn't have any training yet. I was really eager with like, I want to go to Afghanistan, I want to go on a deployment, I want to help out. And basically my chain of command said, you need this kind of training, you need this kind of training before you go overseas. So I basically waited a good 2.5 years before I started the process to go to Afghanistan, which was a training in California. which I did for 2 months with the Americans, and I did a course called TAC Med. So basically we got trained a good year before we even decided to deploy. In 2009, I started my pre-deployment training, and in 2010 I deployed.
This is the big time. It's like being called up from the minor leagues. It's a chance to go out and prove, you're a militia, you're part-time, you can't do what we do. So we kind of went, well, we'll see. Everybody joins the military for a different reason, or a different part of the military for a different reason. But at the end of the day, when you're over somewhere doing the job, representing the country, it's really the pride you have in the people with you doing a job on behalf of the Canadians. We do things so other people don't have to do them.
It's not going to be like the Patriot. It's not going to be Black Hawk Down. Never thought of that. I just thought this is something that needed to be done, and I want to do it. I want to be part of it.
It's just what you do. You decide what you're going to do, you grow up, and you go and do it. It's kind of the way I was brought up, and that's just kind of the way it felt. I didn't really feel like I had to have a major game plan to do this. It just felt natural.
I didn't have an issue with trying to help a human being. And honestly, I think that came back from the fact that I couldn't help my dad. And even though I have like that little survivor's guilt kind of feeling, I just felt like that was that natural feeling of like, I couldn't help him, but I'm gonna help people.
I don't know the reasons why people over there want to kill you so badly. I just wanted to go do something good, make a difference. I thought that was a noble thing to do.
Kandahar Air Base, Afghanistan. Serving as a foothold for our soldiers, they begin taking their bearings quickly and quietly, with the threat of the Taliban regime around every corner.
You get there, what did you do in Afghanistan?
Arriving in Afghanistan was kind of surreal for me. We landed, walked down the Herc ramp, and it was just heat. It was just hot. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, pitch black dark, following some guy with a glow stick tied to his hat into a building. They decided we weren't going to do the Welcome to Kandahar training at the airfield. So within an hour and a half of landing in Kandahar, I was in an RG-31 heading for Camp Nathan Smith.
They mustered us into an old hangar. It was still night. There was another sergeant from the troops that we were relieving that was telling us where to go, and there was a sergeant major there that was giving us a briefing, telling us, this is this thing, and where are you going to go to get this? You've got to acclimatize, so here's all the information you're going to need for the next couple of days. And they sent us to our temporary lodgings for the rest of the night, and the next 2 days was getting the rest of our kit that we needed to get issued, and then the day after that, we were on a Chinook flying out to Massamgar. All you can see is just flat desert with mountain peaks popping up every once in a while. And then they landed us in Massamgar, and that's when we linked up with the guys that we were taking over from, and their guys got onto the chopper and were flown out, and they had been there 6 months now. And I remember before we left, my sergeant looking at me and saying, pay attention. These guys have been there, they know their stuff. What's the feel of the civilian populace? What routes are extremely dangerous? What you should avoid? Get a lay of the land. Make sure that you know where you're going. First little bit, we were there and doing just daily patrols around to make sure that routes were safe. They were building a new highway. We were patrolling that to make sure that they weren't putting IEDs in it. It was just a lot to take in at once.
So that's when you spend a couple of days learning about, okay, you're going to be stepping outside the wire and this is what to expect. And you get all the NAWs and the instructions and the whatever, and it's like, okay, fine. But when you first load up your vehicles and you start, okay, we're going on a patrol, and you can do the patrol matrix and you look and see the map and this is where we're going, and then you realize that you're on point. You are on point. As soon as you step out the gate, your head is on a swivel and you are in 360-degree surveillance mode and you are at the ready. Even though you don't seem it, you can't be at the ready with your weapon ready to fire, your body is at the ready. It has to be. It has to be. And you've got your whole team that's at the ready constantly. And it's exhausting. But then it becomes normal. And our job was to patrol to basically keep the roads clear, because we had a lot of CLPs, the convoys and whatnot going through. We had to patrol for combatants or potential combatants. We were there to enforce and maintain peace if we could. So we were the guys that were boots on the ground with an objective, and the objective was, at some points, it was poke the bear. We were there to ensure the safety of the population that was there, and sometimes that meant getting into combat.
I worked on the supply side, making sure that the CIMIC teams that were going out and doing the reconstruction, if they needed forklifts, cranes, I was the one who found them. We were the Walmart without actually anything in it. We had to find what was there. So that was our most of my job. First trip over, where I was working with the locals so much that we had an officer, psychological operations officer, and he watched me interact with the locals. So about halfway through the tour, he said, you should come over and start working with us. So I ended up as one of the early guys to come into the psychological operations. It's a lot of understanding how people work, how to get them to do kind of what you want. That being said, we traveled around in large metal boxes, wore body armor, ballistic eyewears and helmets, and said, your neighborhood is safe, look at us, we're walking around here. We would say, this tribe in this area does this. Every day at this time, how the pattern of life works. Those are the kind of things we would take back to the commander and say, listen, guys, when these guys go through here, this happens. Like, not be in the path of a battle group clearing of the Taliban. We were also looking at the kinetic commanders, going, guys, if you roll this armored column through here, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. It's going to negatively impact what the overall mission is. So we kind of became a sober second thought a lot of times, or annoying puppy, depending on who you were talking to.
So we will continue to conduct these operations like we're conducting in your village, to connect with the people and to find the insurgents and to find their supplies of weapons and IEDs.
Myself, I ended up working with the American Military Police Battalion, and their job was training the Afghani National Police. We had a lot of issues with tribal dynamics and things like that in the area, and pay was a big one. They didn't get paid. The money would come in, it would go to the station commander, well, he would take a cut. The things we did to impact that is bank cards. We set up electronic banking for the Afghan police in Kandahar province. These are things that people just took for granted as like, oh, they don't do this, they don't do that, but we lived with them. We lived in the area, so we get to know how they thought, how they worked. Like, you get an idea, especially a complicated idea across in training, and they light up, and you'd be like, yeah, it was like a little victory for yourself.
Just ask him to finish it off with Tate here.
I was attached with the RCR, so which is like the infantry. I was basically their medic. They did patrols. I was walking with them. It was like a platoon of like 12 people. So we had the officer, we had the signaler, we had infanteers, and I would just walk with them. Med bag on my back, plates, weapon, helmet, 10 mags on me. Yeah. I was their mom. Not gonna lie, I was their mom. And I don't know if it helped that I was a girl, but I felt like they could open up to me and not just be like, oh, I'm fine. Like, I felt like they would be like, well, my toes kind of bothering me or my back's kind of bothering me. And so I was their personal medic. So I did that for probably 4 months, and then I changed battle groups. So I changed completely my team. So I was doing we call it dismounted patrols. So bag on our backs, walking with the locals, walking around town, which was super dangerous because you couldn't tell who were your enemies. You couldn't tell who were the Taliban. You couldn't tell who you can trust. You have to know your guys. You have to know like weaknesses. You have to know, you know, more people were angry, more people were, you know, closed off. And honestly, you're like, they're mini psychologists. You had to put your foot down when it came time for that.
Launch your flag!
Working with infantry, physically fit, mentally fit, and you just have to think, person in front of me would get hurt, comes from the right, what would I do? I would go to the left in that little tiny divot, and you would really get your situational awareness. You would really be like, okay, if it comes from the roof, where can I go? If it's an IED, which is a bomb, where can I go? Where do I bring my patient? And it's basically like, it's a huge mind game, constantly.
I was what's called a reconnaissance patrolman. And my job was, we basically just go out in small sections, probably about 6 people at a time, and we would go to a hot spot where the Taliban might be and set up what's called an observation post and wait to see what we might find. And if you're lucky, you'll see the Taliban doing their business, and we just report back, you know, whatever they're doing, and we just send that back through, and it gets sent through the chain of command, and decisions get made by what we were saying. So you go out at night a lot, like in these small sections, and yeah, it can be pretty hairy. You never know what you're going to encounter. A lot of times in our orders, they would say there could be anywhere from 25 to 250 Taliban in a certain area. We would just set out on foot in a certain direction and just walk out beyond what the perimeter where they could normally see with the, you know, thermal vision, and just try and find the Taliban is what we were doing. So.
Though each on different tours since their initial deployment in 2004, our comrades would share the same common experiences. Integrated into a brand new culture, each of them would be deeply changed, having new perspectives to share.
Yeah, you really have to push yourself over there. I mean, everything is a test. Everything, you know, just the heat alone, it will test you. And then walking, you know, 17 kilometers in that heat, climbing up over a mountain, you know, setting up an OP to watch the Taliban. Everything just seems like it's testing you.
I can tell you that the days would get hot, you know, sweaty, dirty, half asleep or listening to music or something like that, and trying to cope with boredom.
I knew there were different tribes, but the ones we were working with specifically, they have a saying, inshallah, if God wills it. Yeah, we need to start at 8. Inshallah, they'll show up at noon, if they show up at all. Time is not a concept they follow, which gets incredibly frustrating. Being a Westerner, like, oh, we start, and especially if you're a Westerner in the Army, well, 10 o'clock, if you're not here like 15 minutes early, you're late. Yeah, that's not a thing the Afghanis do.
In Afghanistan, you have to earn your respect. So if you're 2 years old, you're nothing. If you're 4, you can work around. If you're 6, then you can help out with cooking. If you're 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, you can have a child. Like, that's how they see children. You have to work your way up to respect. I know our culture is you protect children and women have equal rights, which we worked hard for, and it's not there. It's not there in Afghanistan. They would take their burqas off and I could see their face, and I would take my helmet off. They would just look at me and be like, "You're a woman." And I was like, "Yeah, we're good." And then I would have to like leave, and they would put their burqas back on because they weren't allowed to get seen their faces. That's their culture.
It is like taking the blinders off and inviting every single lens you could ever find in the entire world into you and seeing the complete picture, and then having to decide for yourself what your core values are and how you want to use that information. So basically, it could probably either make or break you. We are a military, and ultimately the military is to train to do the worst. They have to go through this because they're the ones that have signed up to do it so that others don't have to. And if we don't get that experience, we can't do it effectively. We have to grow. So I don't regret that. I guess it is kind of a regret. It wasn't about being glorified as an infantry combat veteran. It wasn't about that whatsoever. It was about the people that served. It was about the brotherhood. I never got to tell those guys that were killed that. I never had a chance to tell them, but I had a chance to find out. And that's something that I can't get back.
Stockpiling ammunition in the winter, the Taliban fought harder and more frequently in the summer months. The most destructive weapon in their arsenal were improvised explosive devices, otherwise known as IEDs. They took the lives of many friends and comrades far too soon.
What do you wish you could change?
The hardest part for me was losing friends. Like I think pretty much everybody's been there, is, said, what could I do different? Was it something I could have done? Is there a piece of information, something I missed? Those are the kind of things you think about, but after a lot of reflection, there's not a lot I could have done, I think. We knew something had happened. We had gone dark, so they shut down all communications back to Canada. It was me, my two corporals, and the weren't staying around. And the Camp Sergeant Major came up to us and goes, okay guys, we've had an IED strike. There's been a lot of people were killed. There was definitely a few reservists. We don't know who. We'll let you know as soon as we find out more. Okay, so now we're like, okay, who is it? Like, where was it? What details? That just made it worse. So we finally found out later on that night that Chris was killed in an IED blow. Basically, everyone in the back of the vehicle was killed. Fighting season hadn't started, really. It was just a couple gunshots here and there. None of our patrols or anything has been engaged, really. We pretty much go wherever we want. We had freedom of movement. And that was just like, wow. As the summer picked up, it happened more and more and more.
We realized that the winter months were over. And from what we were told, the Taliban and Al-Qaeda would use the winter months to essentially go get more arms, more volunteers from other places. People were shooting at us more. Before I wanted to see some action. I didn't want anybody to get hurt. I just wanted to see some action, Fire my rifle once or twice, in the general direction. But after that, everybody was an enemy as far as I was concerned, if they weren't wearing Canadian Armed Forces CAD-PAT.
One of my best friends got killed over there. When you're in the military, you get really close really quick. And I had a buddy that, he would tell me he loved me even at night, just as a brother. And when he died, they didn't tell us right away. There was like 6 soldiers died on Easter in 2007. We had to wait for an entire night to hear who had been killed in I guess it was an IED strike. So that was hard. And then the next morning they came down and we were just going about our business, and they gathered my section together. They said the names, and when I heard his name, I was like, my knees buckled, and what they call like the 1,000-yard stare. Like you just kind of go off into nowhere. And then I just kind of remember just getting a few minutes, and I walked away, and I kind of sat down in this like sandbag bunker that we had built. And yeah, I cried for a short time, and then I had to suck it back up again and get ready to go do whatever we needed to do. So that's what being a soldier is about. There's no time for crying and feeling sorry for yourself. There's a job to do. In a war, there's no like psychologist or counselor that's going to come out and talk to you then. You basically just have to try and, you know, figure out how to get through it. There's no training for that.
2 of my friends died. We had to keep on going. It was hard to keep the morale up. It was hard to keep positive attitude. But we knew that if it wasn't that day, if she would have been sick or he would have been sick, I could have jumped in that vehicle, right? The biggest thing is to stay positive. I know a lot of people around me weren't necessarily positive. I felt like I had the responsibility to stay positive because in the back of my mind, I had not necessarily worse things happen to me, but the fact that my dad died in front of me, that was unexpected. And at least in Afghanistan, stuff like that might have happened. So I felt okay. When I got back home to Canada, it really hit me hard. But during that time, I was in this different mentality of like, let's get the mission done. Like, I'm mentally and physically ready. Let's keep on going.
Reality was completely different for us. We've been in combat many times. We had been in, we had engaged the enemy. But this is the first time where it went so horribly wrong. Our platoon commander had seen some locals that were sort of coming out of their buildings. And so he was going to go over there and investigate and talk to them and see what was happening and sort of do his job. So the rest of us, me as a lab sergeant, I would coordinate, we call it a leaguer. So we set up the vehicles in a starburst so that we could see 360 degrees and we're in a defensive posture. And then we set up some observation posts because we're going to be sitting there for a while. The general rule was no more than 19 minutes because it takes 20 minutes for them to find us, set up an ambush, and engage us. So the general rule at that point was 19 minutes, don't stay anywhere past that time. So we had set up our OPs and everybody was doing their job. I mean, we've been like pretty much 7 months there and everybody knew their roles. We had, the privates to the platoon commander, everybody was well polished. We were seasoned veterans at this point. We knew what we were doing. It was at that point that I realized I had reached the pinnacle of my career. I'm a combat soldier. I had done everything that I ever wanted to do, and I thought, this is it. This is my greatest moment. I was watching a couple of the young fellas walk by my carrier, and I saw them, and they were dirty, and they're one guy kind of had his weapon sort of not quite up at the ready. He didn't have to be, and his pant leg was debloused, and they were talking shit to each other, and you could just see like they were just comrades. They were just they were so safe and so content with each other, and they were so content with where they were. They knew they were protected. And I realized, watching those guys, they were the kind of guys that I probably wouldn't have put through battle school. I wouldn't have passed them, because they wouldn't listen, and they couldn't keep the uniform tidy. The only thing that mattered at that point was the fact that we were all brothers, and that we saved each other's lives countless times, and that we could count on each other, and we did our job well. And I thought, my God, I had it all wrong. It's about the people that put the uniform on, not about the equipment, not about what the uniform looks like, not about any of that stuff. It's the people that decide, I'm signing up on the dotted line, and I'm going to sacrifice, and I'm going to do the job. I had it all wrong. And then about 30 seconds later, their vehicle was hit by a direct fire ambush, and we lost 3 immediately. So 5 were wounded.
What happened to those 2?
What happened to those 2?
Those 2 guys that walked by.
Yeah, 2 of them were killed. Yeah, the same ones that I watched walk by.
The various tours our comrades signed up for seemed much longer with the mourning of their fellow soldiers. It wasn't until the smoke settled that they'd be given the chance to process everything they had been put through.
We'd never gone complacent, but we become hyper alert at that point. So when we had to get back to CAF, when we had to take our brothers back and send them home to repatriate them, it was a very tense final patrol. It was a very tense final patrol to get back there, to get our brothers back home.
They do ramp ceremonies at Kandahar Airfield. They're, for the most part, very gut-wrenching for me to even see on TV. I couldn't go to Chris's. I had an operational requirement to be where I was. So Camp Nathan Smith started doing something. They carried on, as far as I know, till the time the Canadians left that base. We took the photos of the members, put it on our little memorial we had set up there. And if somebody knew something about them, they'd stand up and they'd say a few words. I did that more than I wanted to on that tour.
It affected me really deeply. Just seeing, death is not, I don't know, people here don't know, like they don't get what actual death looks like. It's clinical here, we have hospitals and you go away and, you go into a hospital and you kind of pass away. And then we have funerals. But in Afghanistan, death is like it's right in your face, like it's like almost like an everyday occurrence. They don't even have graves like we have. They pile rocks on top of bodies. And a graveyard in Afghanistan is not like here. You don't walk into a nice grassy field. You walk into a dirty, dusty place and they erect like flags off them. And all you smell is the smell of death. It's not until you get back that it actually like fully hits you. Because there's so many things going on. There's people trying to kill you. You're trying to get your stuff done that you need to do for patrol or, and then when you won't go out on a patrol, you just hope that you come back. And yeah, like you're worried about IED strikes and everything really. So it's the times when you get like time to stop, that's when it comes rushing back. Like when you're in your bunk sleeping, that's when you feel, it hits you the most.
That's the reality I'm talking about. We don't have a chance to think about what happened. I didn't realize what the really important part was. It was about the brotherhood. I never got to tell those guys that were killed that. I never had a chance to tell them that I had it all wrong, that they were the best people to have on my left and right.
It had a very profound impact on your life,
It did. It completely changed the way I thought of everything.
After their tours were complete, our troops return home to a life they left on pause. Without much support, these hardened veterans would have to face a new kind of enemy, while adjusting back to a life that seemed much sweeter only months before.
Tell me a bit about what it was like to come back.
It was pretty easy to come back at first. I mean, you're excited, you want to come back home. And when you come back home, there's like a big, huge, all the families are waiting and it's exciting, they march you in with a bagpipe and you start to process what you've just been through. And yeah, it gets rough. I mean, you start thinking about things that you saw and I don't know, it gets rough and it actually gets a little bit rougher for the first little bit that you're home. I used to have dreams even about that place still. And about people here. I mean, I had a dream once that I was walking on the sidewalk and I thought I saw what was part of an IED and I started ripping at it on the sidewalk and screaming at people to stay back. And that was just dreams that I was having. That's just one, but yeah, it just kind of invades your thoughts. Losing your friend, losing your friend it's kind of depressing really. I mean, it brings you down. No matter how much you try to get past it, I mean, you can't stop thinking about them. It'd be nice to be able to go out and go for a beer with them again. I have dreams that he was still alive. So I just decided to not do it anymore.
At what point were you diagnosed with PTSD?
I think it was around 2008.
How did you handle that? What did that mean to you?
I didn't accept it. I just said, whatever. They said you have it, and I said, okay, whatever. And I didn't accept any treatment or anything. I just I just got out and just tried to start a new career. So I got married, and my wife and I broke up, and I think that was like probably the final indicator that I should probably go talk to somebody and get some help. So.
I know a couple of my medic friends that are released from the military because they dealt with it during the tour, but as soon as they got back to Canada, they were just like, I'm done. I dealt with the trauma, and I felt like, yes, it's not easy, but I can deal with this. I dismounted for almost 9 months. Like, I was walking with the infanteer sometimes twice a day, and I didn't get a scratch on me. I didn't get PTSD from it. I don't have nightmares. I talk about it like anybody can ask me any questions. I'm fine with it. And it's not just the mask I'm putting on. I'm okay with it. There's nothing that I went through from the hard times of being the only girl out of 60 guys. We did have deaths, but we signed the dotted line to go there, right? It's the mission. We were there to help hearts and minds of the country. If it actually changed, that's so over my pay scale. I'm not gonna lie. I was there to help my infanteer guys while they were walking to support the area and support the people. So my job was to protect them, which I did. So I wouldn't change a thing. I had the best experience ever. Like, positive and negative, I had the best experience. Yeah.
I wasn't told I had PTSD at first. I was told that everything at first was because of my messed up childhood. I had a very hard time articulating how wrong things were feeling. Nightmares and stuff like that I had been having for years. I just never really let anybody else know about. The hard time sleeping. Completely honest, I mean, not a lot of people knew that I had PTSD. They saw paperwork that was going to affect their schedules and stuff like that, and everything was kind of stressful for them, and so this was just one extra thing, and so all they saw was more paperwork and more of a hassle. I felt alone. I felt cold. I wasn't allowed to deploy because of illnesses, and so they started the process of releasing me. People were like, well, you know, you got to plan for this and you got to plan for that and all this other things. And I'm sitting here going, I'm having nightmares and I'm having a hard time getting out of bed, let alone showing up for a job. At the time I didn't care, but now, you know, there's days when I want to be back in. If I can go back to Afghanistan right now, I would. It's a lot easier than living the life that I'm living now. It's pretty easy. You get up, you go get shot at, you shoot back a little bit, and then, you know, you try not to die. That's the process. When you're back here, there's about a million things, and I don't know.
I'm a reservist. I came home to home. I didn't have that bunch of guys that I see every day. I didn't have that military structure to come back to, despite the hoops you have to jump through, like for mental health and all that other stuff. But it was like on my own time. I didn't get lined up in a big group of people and like, you will do this right now, you'll do this right now. And I found that was very comforting because I had access to other people that they wouldn't have probably had access to. Like, you know, you get your wife and your kids, but you've been gone for 8 or 9 months. So you got to learn back. I came home to just being me and hanging out with my buddies. So I think it was a different homecoming for me. I just got lucky, I think. And I stayed in the reserves because I generally enjoyed what I did.
The first thing they wanted to do, because of the nature of the ambush and the intensity of what we had gone through on that one patrol, they were like, we're going to keep you guys together. Holy, you guys have been through some stuff. We're going to keep these guys busy. We're going to put them on courses. We're going to get them on career courses. We're going to get them out in the field and do exercises. Everybody gets disseminated and spread all over the place without closure. My job was to administer that. being tasked, I had to send somebody to a gun camp. And he came in and I'm like, okay, I'm sending you on a gun camp, you're going next week. And he kind of went, okay. And just the way he said it, and I said, is there a problem with that, or what's wrong with that, or whatever? He's like, well, yeah, I just had some appointments. I asked him what the appointments were, and he says, well, I wanted to go to mental health. What do you want to go to mental health for? And he says, well, I'm thinking of killing myself. And I sat there, and I thought, I'm tasking somebody to go on a gun camp who wants to take his own life.
Doug's experience in the war and approachable personality made him a candidate for something much bigger. Wanting to help his fellow comrades, he decided to leave the infantry and focus one-on-one with soldiers experiencing PTSD.
And I did really well. Like I was being recognized from, even in Ottawa, like who is this guy and what's he doing kind of thing. And so I started working at a much bigger scale than just the battalion. I was representing the base at one point, for suicide and things like this. It felt good. There's no such thing as an infantry sergeant, social worker, casualty support officer. It doesn't exist. So my RSM basically said to me, we got to figure out what to do with you. Your position isn't real. At that point, I was just about to finish my bachelor's in social work. I was basically told point blank, that's never going to happen. You're an infantry sergeant, and that's exactly how that's what we're going to use you for. And you're not able to finish your schooling. And I realized at that point that I was completely alone. And basically the walls came in on me, and the ground fell in from underneath me, and I was lost. And I drove away. I drove away from the base, and I said, I'm not coming back. I was trying to get help with the system. I was trying to figure out why the system wasn't working for me, or why weren't they understanding? Another veteran in Halifax who does some pretty cool work with veterans himself, we just happened to meet, and he happened to hear about my story, about working in the casualty support cell and all the things I've been doing. And he sent me an email and said, listen, there's this program, it's called the Veterans Transition Program. I think you should go on it. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what the hell that is, but I'll do it. And I remember sitting in circle time for the first time ever, really. And I looked over at this young fella who sat across from me. And I sat there for 12 hours, and I hated him. I hated him with a passion. He had no right to be there. How dare he be there in my circle? I went into true infantry sergeant mode, and I pulled the lead facilitator out, who's 6'4", and I completely jacked him up. And I was like, how dare you bring me here? How dare you bring him here? And because of their training and understanding in trauma and group work, he took me back to their place. He took me back to their cottage, their cabin that they were staying in. He walked in and said, Doug needs to talk to somebody. Are you able to? And he looked at the kid. Well, I shouldn't call him a kid. He looked like a kid to me at the time. And next thing you know, I was surrounded by all the people that were in there. We're all facilitators, all part of the staff. They surrounded us. They protected us like a circle. And then all of a sudden I realized that that kid was one of the guys that we lost in the ambush. And I was so angry because he shouldn't have been there, because he was dead. And when I realized that, I was able to tell him all the things I couldn't tell him on that day. So I was able to tell him that I loved him. I was able to tell him how proud I was to serve with him. They gave me the space to do it in such a beautiful way that all of a sudden I was able to see his face again. 6 years afterwards, I finally see his face again. So that was my healing. I needed to say goodbye, and I never knew I had to. That was my healing.
I started doing music production. Like a bunch of equipment with wires and cables hanging of it everywhere, and it's like mass chaos. I've done so much now where I look at different waveforms. As the song's playing, I can pull out different parts of a song and picture what that waveform might look like and how I can shape it. The further you want to go down that rabbit hole of electronic music production, there's no limit.
So what about it feels fulfilling for you, that keeps drawing you back to doing it?
Making a song that doesn't suck. Or trying to? No, it's just making music in general, like making a full song. It feels like you've actually done something. When you actually finish an entire song and it's a good song from start to finish, you feel like you did something. I don't know, life for me now is just, like, I'm doing music, I'm working on myself, like I've started to work out again. Whatever I can do to stay busy, I guess. I'm probably planning on doing something, going back to school. I'm just not sure what yet.
Perfect, thank you.
I don't really talk about a lot of this stuff a lot, other than over a beer with some of my friends that were there. I enjoy those times I still get to talk to those guys. And it could be like 4 or 5 hours, or it could be 4 or 5 in the morning. We just sit down, have a drink, and see where we end up at the end of the day.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
No problem.
I really appreciate it.
Afghanistan isn't a shithole that we went to. Afghanistan isn't combat. It's a whole mixture of everything, but it's life experience. And it's a life experience that I never would have had I not gone. And it's changed my trajectory. It's given me a completely different outlook on life. And that is something that I cherish.
Welcome. What do you think your dad would say about all of your experience there?
He would probably say, I couldn't have done that. He would have probably said, I'm really proud of you. I know he's proud of me. I believe that he's my guardian angel, so yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
What makes you hopeful? What are you looking forward to?
A day when I can put a lot of the hard feelings I have for myself and for what I did overseas behind me. That I can look back and say, yes, I did this. Yes, I was there. And yes, I served with a lot of people whom deserve the honor and respect that should be given to them. But right now, I don't see that hope. And so I'm just trying to fight for it.